Hey everyone, I'm David Berkowitz with AI Marketers Guild, part of Marketecture, and here for another edition of AI Insiders. And love having an old friend getting to go and share some thoughts today, and someone I've long admired, and I know a lot of people in this room have known or at least been following for quite some time because I can't think of any better outlet that taught me and probably a whole generation or two of my peers about culture as PSFK. And so for me to have any conversations with peers and given how much I've learned from him and his team and just all the incredible work they've put together, it's such a treat. Like, total fanboy here. I don't mind saying so, because I'm a fan of some pretty good work. And now with what Piers is doing in the AI space, I mean, like when I saw some of the first versions of it, it was immediately applicable. I even knew some folks trying to do something similar, and of course, like, Piers was years ahead of that. So welcome to AI Marketers Guild.
Thank you, everybody. David, it's a pleasure to be here. Those are very kind words, and I think all of us, we all bounce around different networking sites and spaces, and go to different webinars and things like that. And there's something about this group you brought together and the conversations that you host, which is special and valuable and engaging. And I think we could all agree with that. I think so. I appreciate that. Yeah. But I appreciate everybody else coming along. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes, I hope, talking about some of the things I'm thinking about with AI. As Dave said, I have been working in insights, trends and insights and data for about more than 20 years, shall we say. And that business, I think I've told a few of you, that business changed November 22 when they released ChatGPT. And suddenly there was a big question mark about why would you hire a guy like this when you can ask a chatbot for all the answers. And so it's been an interesting journey for me about how to kind of reinvent, re-explore, lean into this kind of dragon. And I've been doing that. And I've been most recently been thinking about this concept of human agents, which I'd love to spend a few minutes talking about and get your reaction. This is the first time I've spoken about it. So, which is great. And at the same time, I could just mess up and I could just, stumble and I will mumble for sure. Okay. And also, at the same time, obviously, I have a lot of anxiety, not about this so much, but about what's going to happen at 3:00. So, for the last 9 months, I've spoken to some of you about this concept of fodder. Fodder is this. It's like a data. It's basically providing AI systems with expert data. Talking about how a human using an LLM can access better data rather than we hear about AI slop, work slop, trend slop, or an agentic system can have access to better data. I've been banging on a door about it, and one of the things, and I've had some friction with it, and some of the friction could be my selling, could be the product idea, blah blah. But one of the ideas is about whether we are set up at work to actually do some of the things that I'm trying to pitch, access data, and things like that. So, this is a very simplistic view of how I see AI at work evolving. It kind of comes from a lot of been doing a lot of demo calls like yourselves, been talking to a lot of people. But how I see AI at work evolving is from a place where maybe today, but in the past, we were all signing up for tools, writing tools and things like that. We were using co-pilots, we still are, and we were accessing LLMs. And what's happening is we are moving into more of kind of a headless experience. So before we were going to places to use these tools, and now these tools are beginning to appear within our LLM. Perplexity and Claude Anthropic are leading this way. So if you're a regular Claude user, you're probably customizing your experience and adding in your Gmail, your Canva, your Fireflies and things like that. And then you are interacting with that software via LLM experience. And what's going to happen, one of the ideas that I'm thinking about is how we are, one of the things that's happening right now, a lot of your folks are vibe coding, agentic coding, and then how we begin to become more of agents ourselves when we become digital twins and we can use those digital twins. Okay. And when I talk about a digital twin, we're talking about this process where we take, and some of this is a little could be controversial or definitely worth a discussion at the end, where we take skills, experience from humans, and we ingest them and we turn those skills, experience, and knowledge into agentic systems, agents. So the synthetic marketing manager, synthetic media planner, and things like that. Sometimes it might actually be a number of staff might actually create a single marketer or a single retailer or something like that. Okay. And what happens is this human agent has a mix of human qualities in terms of tone of voice, way they'd approach, connected knowledge, access to a vast amount of knowledge data that humans definitely don't have access to very quickly. And maybe even machines don't. And obviously agentic capabilities can do stuff with all of the above. Okay. And the clock is there to remind me that these systems, we talk about engineering loop a little bit these days. Yeah. And so these human agents learns and evolves over time. It's not a one hit, you don't just build it and then use it. You continue to evolve. So when I talk about human agents, what I'm talking about is, and I talk about human agents connecting to knowledge, what we're going to do is kind of create like synthetic CMOs, synthetic VP of retails who can access the corporate brain, the corpus of knowledge that's within a organization. Folks are already trying to do that. Obviously, some of it is very simplistic, some is very complicated, but there's also those agents, as human agents, can also access a whole bunch of other external data to help it with this decision making and access that data in real time. And then in terms of agentic capabilities, what these agents can do is today often with the agents, the systems that we use, that they kind of read, write, analyze, create a plan for us. But more and more, they're going to begin to do processing. They're going to begin to run systems, control factory floors, direct staff, and even sell on our behalf. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm inspired by is Anton Labs. Anton Labs is this sort of like quirky little AI startup think tank, obviously out of Silicon Valley. And they have two cafes. They have a cafe in San Francisco and they have a cafe in Stockholm. And they basically let Claude run those stores. Okay. And so it's an interesting case study where we basically have an agent that is kind of doing not only planning, but actually running, hiring staff, and organizing those businesses. So you might go, well, why do we even need to do this? And there are some very scary stats come about basically the decline of knowledge within an organization. I mean, there's always been knowledge management issue within organizations. For 400 years of U.S. capitalism, there's always been issues with how do we retain knowledge, how do we share knowledge, how do we leverage knowledge. There's this scary stat about is a $1 trillion cost per year around a kind of unplanned downtime because of skill loss. And what's basically happening is people are retiring, senior executives and just senior workers are retiring, and they're taking their knowledge with them. There's this, and particularly within industrials, this is where the big scary thing is right now. 65% of manufacturing maintenance teams expect to lose critical knowledge. It's hard to kind of hard, especially today, to kind of get that knowledge back or get juniors trained up. This is a post I saw this morning. It was talking about the fact that Nestle had cut 16,000 jobs. And this is what he talks about. Well, what happens? You train all these people and you're just going to fire them. What about everything they learned, all the processes they know? They're just going to take that knowledge and go somewhere else, hopefully. And you're going to lose that within the organization. So, and why am I talking about human agents? Why do I think there's this moment where we can create these kind of digital twins that can think and act on our behalf and gather data? There's kind of 4 different areas which I'm thinking about. Okay, ingestion. So ingestion is like gathering of the data, bringing the data into the systems. Yeah. So we see this kind of sophistication happening at a rapid pace. Yeah. I don't know how many folks have used Bordy, that kind of investor app where you can talk, you can get deals and you can get part networking, and basically it's done over the phone. They phone you up, an Australian phones you up, and or an AI Australian phones you up, and you go have conversations about what you're looking for. And then Jack and Jill out of London is a recruitment service that does all its recruiting through an AI interview. So we have this great AI interview stuff happening. We have knowledge graphs is kind of what I base all of my technology on. The way I see knowledge graphs is a way of structuring data, which AI finds easier to understand, and AI finds it easier to like traverse and see patterns within the data, rather than vectorized databases or uploading folders full of reports. This concept's been around for a long time, but we're now using this more and more. The other big thing is MCP connectors. So we've had MCP for a while. Now we kind of get to the stage where any piece of software can talk to any other piece of software through like agent to agents in some ways, and talk to each other without having to understand all the rules. And so you can create very sophisticated interactions between software. And so that's really interesting for me. And so, as I said, Claude and Perplexity are really kind of leading this, I think, from my point of view. And then we had just agentic systems. Now, we have been talking about agents forever. But what I love about agents is they're not only kind of retrieving data, or you ask them a question, they go find something out, they can actually go off and do things for you. Which includes, obviously, write a business plan, but, they can run a robot, drive a forklift. That's, that sort of stuff's coming. And then, one of the things that we think about is, one of the things, to be, to be a capitalist, like one of the big themes that's kind of driving this is, how do we maximize value from labor? This has always been around. Here's Henry Ford trying to work out how to do it, so he did. And how do we continue to think about how we get the most out of labor? Okay. So the next slide says, why do I care? Which is a good point. But I have been thinking about how to kind of create a layer, or help companies create a layer of agents that have access to knowledge. Okay. And so the way I've been building is, don't look at the name so much, but it's thinking about helping companies create these agents who can access the corporate brain, but they can also access a whole load of other knowledge. We talked about knowledge graphs, domain context, earnings calls, economic indicators. And so these little synthetic characters, your digital twin, can go off and do work, find out information for you. And then they can do different activities for you on your behalf, okay, as a starter. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about how we create those digital twins, those human agents, okay, to kind of wrap it up. And then I'd love to get your reaction as I think this through. So I think there's kind of 4 steps to turning somebody into a human agent. How do I? So we do it through a probe, an interview, deep research, and a triggered follow up. Okay, and so I've been using this phrase called on-clouding. So like onboarding, we can use the LLM to kind of take a user through a bunch of different steps to um to kind of like gather information about that new user. You could use it in signups. I use it for kind of these experts. And so what's happening here is during the on-Claude probe is the fodder through the LLM is searches through your conversational history, another sticky point, to understand what type of experts you are. Are you an AI expert? Are you a retail expert? It also, if it's connected and you give permission, it will look through your transcripts, it will look through your granola, it'll look through your Zoom transcripts and stuff like that, and try to create a profile about you. Okay. And you can see here, it's basically said, hey, I see 6 themes that are really kind of driving kind of your expertise through the experience. Okay. The second stage is, so once we kind of gather and we understand those 6 themes that Piers is an expert in, we want to just round them out and want to try to understand some more themes. And so we do an audio interview. Let's see if it works. Oh, it's a PDF. If I was more clever, this would play. And basically what happens is Claude triggers a Google Meet window. The Google Meet opens and an interview that looks like this happens, and you get a voiceover reading that question and walking you through like a 10-question interview. And so the expert is basically, and the employee is trying to answer all these questions and try to kind of fit out the database, which we then turn into a graph. And then what we do is we regularly follow up with that expert or that employee. So it could be a once a month status call, briefing, debrief, or it could be there's something big happens and you can automatically send them an email or telephone them and say, hey, can you answer 2-3 questions? And again, that can be organized, obviously, coordinated by the machine. The machine does the interview, you turn it into the graph, and you add that to the database and things like that. So I'm thinking about what this means, what sort of implications, what you can do with these different agents and stuff like that. But it's just kind of something I'm thinking about offering and helping organizations more and more. But there are some questions to think about. Okay, like whose skills do we use? Whose skills do we digitize? Who owns that data? Right? If you're an employee, does your employer have the right to like turn your data into an agent? If there are businesses out there who have become digitized and make more money out of retail media than they make selling baked beans. What happens when companies start making more money out of their little agents than they do out of the products that the organization or the service that they used to do? And then, can you take your agent with you when you leave, or can you bring an agent to work as well? So, then different things and different themes that need to be thought about and will be discussed as this evolves. But I appreciate your time. And that's my kind of thinking today around the human agent.
I don't know if you read Satya Nadella's latest salvo on you're paying AI companies twice. You're paying for the tokens you're using, and you're paying to train the models. And so creating your own agents is really in step with what he's saying, to create things on your own doorstep, so you're not sharing your intellectual capital broadly. So spot on, I think.
It's great. I love that. I'll make sure I look that up. I think one of the things I've been thinking about in the last 9 months is that sort of firewall with data, where how you can act. What I love about knowledge graphs and things like that is you can query them and get the data, but you don't have to give all the data over at one go, and so you lose your your sort of your rights, your IP.
That is the magic word I wanted to bring up, IP. And what a kind of phrase that you ended on, Piers, with the presentation, the balance of what do I own versus what have I signed away for whoever I'm working for versus what they own exclusively, because it is a spectrum. And when you leave, what if it's your digital twin that now becomes the company's data, and what of your personality and opinions and presence has any sense of control in that data? If we think of the data itself as packets of agentic data that have purpose and instruction, they're all able to defend their own purposes throughout time. So creating those kinds of nuances of contracts of who owns what and how inspiration becomes something else for somebody, there's so much of that I think we have to work on. And I was wondering if you could elaborate further on your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking whilst I was building this deck, I was thinking about the show Severance, and how the characters detach themselves and do work, and then they and then they come back home and stuff like that. And so you're sort of giving yourself to the employer. I guess if you're more junior, you are, so for back in the day, that was your job. You take the job, you get trained. So arguably, why can't the employer maximize what they can get out of the digitization of you? It probably is more difficult when you're more senior and you're coming in, you're getting hired because of your experience. And then basically the machine goes through your emails, goes through your decks, goes through everything it can find to create a digital version of you. Should it be allowed to? Should you renegotiate that? These are kind of questions to be thought about. I mean, the thing is, it sounds a little fantastical, but machines are already, they're already going through your emails and stuff like that. So, yeah.
As long as everything's recorded and we have the IP economy and patents and copyright and trademark, we just need all this flash licensing and stuff that happens on that level. Mm-hmm. That's why I wrote the book, The IP Economy, last year on this. It's exactly, there's so much infrastructure to build for that. And there's so many dollars and cents just waiting to be uncovered through ideas. Thank you.
So I have two thoughts on this. Number one, I use Claude for programming. So basically the products that I develop. And my experience with Claude is I even have a harness for memory. And it has, it's supposed to remember, how I connect to AWS, how I connect to GitHub, all these different things. And more often than not, it forgets, even though it should. And I have to remind it to, hey, you've already done this before. And then it goes and searches through its memories and then finds out and does the right thing. Mm-hmm. My point is, I'm not sure, even though these AI models and agents have all the tools, when it comes to creative work and some more nuanced work, how capable they are to be independent agent. I can definitely see for mechanical work and repetitive work how it's possible, but for creative work, the other thing is I use curation for content generation, the research. And one of the things that I'm confident of, I was the other day watching a presentation by Seth Godin. And I'm also a member of a Toastmaster, so I pay a lot of attention to speech structure and how you open a speech. And I can pretty much guarantee you there's no AI that's ever going to be creatively able to come up with how do you open a speech creatively. They can look at the data and they can maybe mimic different stuff, but I haven't actually seen it. And the other thing that I want to say, like even when it comes to content, I believe curation is the superpower, but I also, in my experience, believe that even if you use research, you have to know your research. You have to know the content. You can direct AI to use different pieces of it when you have structured content and you can talk to it in that way. But the idea that the AI, because it has all of the data, it can then
Yeah.
be this creative agent, I haven't seen it yet.
I'd love to just respond about a couple of things. One is, what I think about is actually creating agents that are special, that are focused on a particular skill. Yeah. So they're like, we are all, if I ask all of you what your expertise is, you'll probably come back with 5 different expertise topics. Yeah. Because we all have these kind of skills. So I agree, Karen, that we need to focus about, you can't create the all-knowing, all-being being. But so there's focus. In terms of your experience with Claude, I'm naive to the programming, but what it does is use cards and files, basically. It saves files about what it knows about you. And I think actually, I talk about knowledge graphs a lot, but I think there's actually a mix of memory systems that we'll need to use. Tabular, cards, other types of systems. I'm on a journey trying to understand this myself. And so that we can kind of retain, there can be some sort of consistency of memory. But it's a great point to kind of bring up.
Here's
What I think for Karen, I think like 98% of speakers are boring, aren't they? So like, there's only 2% are brilliant. So we need AI. I'm sorry, Liz.
Jess is saying I should get my question in there. Thanks, Jess. So, Piers, I've been a fan for a long time, just like David. I worked at Headlight Vision, and then it was acquired by Kantar and WPP. So, we sold content like insights and trends and followed you all the time. So I was so excited when your name popped up. I was like, I know him. He's famous. So it's so good to see you. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
And I talked to a lot of founders who are, marketers and interested in this idea of like not resisting the AI, but controlling it. My question is like, should we also resist it? Is resistance futile? Like, I'm getting crawled by AI, and I'm finding that my content is starting to train the model, and I really don't want it to be, right? Like, should I resist it, expecting a month of delay that like the IP protection or like disinformation will give me like one like silly month of delay? Or do you think it's just like futile? Like we should just
I think that, I don't know. I mean, I think we should, I think we're all thinking about it. There's different things we're thinking about in terms of AI right now, quality of outputs, where my data is going and stuff like that. A lot of us freelancers, consultants, small business owners don't have the luxury of using an enterprise version of a piece of software. And so we are protecting our data in different ways. Again, what I'm beginning to like is how you can create databases or create knowledge centers which can be queried rather than just upload all your files into a database that the AI can then crawl and everything else. But there's also one other thing which I'm thinking about, which is around, I mean, I did PSFK, do PSFK for 20 plus years. And most of apart from like the last 90, 120 days, is kind of worthless. So what's important for us, actually, maybe my answer now for about it is, it's about us being current and continuing to advance and providing the new. And so that's kind of with the telephone call that happens afterwards. The machine can't do that. The machine's backward looking. So what we are forward looking and things like that. And I think maybe my answer is let go of the past. Just use your skills to think about the current and think about the future.
So these have been all great comments, and each one's been additive from the beginning of or recently with the notion of curation being so important. Certainly the memory graph to this one. The question that's kind of we're bridging between is around identity, around whose identity is it? Is it the ownership of the individual, and particularly us in marketing communities where we can be very transient in our careers, sometimes corporate, sometimes freelancer, sometimes, business owner, what have you. And that graph of experience, and our own identity that works in collaboration for production of things, or for consulting on something, or maybe long-term, my own initiative. So I think that the space in between identity, curation, and our knowledge and our social graph are all kind of pieces that come together that are super context for whatever we're plugging into, whatever that system of AI that we're collaborating with individually, or collectively as part of a overall project. So I guess I'm going to say that I'm working on a project overall. It's in the memory space, and as I kind of struggled on building out what the use case was, I initially started somewhat in a place like you, Piers, around the portability of knowledge and community that I have that comes into a place and stays for weeks, months, years, and then exits and goes to another place. Then how does one retain all of those things? But I've shifted into kind of more of a institutional knowledge graph model. But I think both are incredibly important. The question that stopped me from going the individual one was who pays for it, and that's the one that stopped me a bit of, well, there's some gaps to this. My last comment to this one perhaps is that I did work on an initiative at a holding company that I worked at, that we looked at that kind of nature between particularly in the creative community, where there could be 20,000 creatives or more in a very large holdco, and that relationship between how do you gain favorability within a holdco to a community of freelancers or ex-employees or what have you, and how do you have that stickiness or retention or a contractual understanding of what am I bringing to the table for this project or this long-term employment, or whatever the term of the employment is, and then what do I take with me? And so I think you're really into a very interesting space to solve those kind of questions. I think Adobe and LinkedIn are into something very interesting with LinkedIn identity being connected to verification of human in knowledge, and I think that's one of the first that's looking at how do we authenticate people as it comes into creativity and other sources.
I love all that. I mean, the LinkedIn is actually the starting point for the LLM journey. Is a LinkedIn login. You log in, and then it's like, okay, now go use it. Now use Claude. I think, and also, if I was speaking to you all 6 weeks ago, I'll be like, hey, I'm trying to digitize you folks and turn you into experts. And I still have that system, but I just started going, I've got to try to sell each one of you to corporations. And then I'm like, I wonder whether I can just go to the corporations and digitize their staff rather than digitizing this wonderful pool of talent. but it's a lot of work to kind of pull kind of networks like this, to digitize networks like this.
I'm curious about what you think about the move for decentralization on something like that, where you're saying, universal, sign in with LinkedIn, still a centralized platform. If we have our own, like Sam Altman's WorldCoin, or what I call an IP ID, you're coming from your owned wallet of identification and a wallet that holds your IP. You mark your IP and you have it there, and you sign in, and it doesn't matter what the platform is you sign onto, because you're your own platform when it comes to that ID. And if we don't have that moving forward, I'm just curious what your vision is for both a centralized and a decentralized potential future with this stuff.
Have you looked at Clerk as a sign-in? I think it's like a replit.
Yeah, there's a lot of semi-decentralized things out there.
Yeah, decentralized logins and stuff like that. They still use Google SSO and stuff like that, but I don't know. Has anybody else got any point of view about decentralization? What I think about is, how can I give you your agent to walk away with and run around with and sell and resell? I'm sort of just, I want to be the marketplace of these little agents. No, I don't want to be the repository, or I don't want to own all these data sources.
I have, I've been experimenting. I have a curation tool, and here's what I'm wondering. When I, for example, add content to Notebook LM, I add structured content with tags. And I have a tool that does the same thing with Claude. What I want, my instructions are only look at contents with these content tags and then generate a response for me based on that. I'm not sure that Notebook LM is able to do this. I think Claude is able to do this. This goes back to your point, and I would like to hear your response to it. Even though there's a huge knowledge base, how confident are we that it's picking the right type of content? Specifically, if it's a structured knowledge base and you're telling it to look at something specifically and it doesn't listen to you.
Yeah. I mean, a quick answer is that I built a multi-step research system. So when Claude queries my database, my data, it the MCP then gets led to, okay, it gets told, here are the different tools you can use. And then when it chooses one of those tools, it goes, okay, here are the 5 different options we have. Then once you choose one of those options, it goes through multiple steps to kind of gather, in the same way a researcher or a content person would go about trying to find information. We take the LLM on a journey rather than just go, hey LLM, here's all the data, you come up with the answer.
So that's gathering it. But what if I'm talking about now using that data to produce something?
Well, that's the delivery. That's what happens. A user says, hey, I want to do a trend report about X. And the machine, and the way we set it up, it goes through like 10 different steps to think about it, gather different information, go find external information in the same way I'd instructed Junior about how to gather information.
And you're always happy with what it comes from? Is that something?
Well, the problem is now I've applied structure to a unstructured kind of system. So I wire it. I think it could be more creative. But I like it. Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean the idea is, okay, it finds the data and collects. So one part of it is a research part, but the other one is the product. What comes out of it is
So what I like about the research stage is experts. So we can gather all the data in the world, but if I can gather the data from people like yourselves, from employees, that's richer, I think, and more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the data is always informative, right? Whether it's the final product or not, whether it is capable of creating something that is actually what I wanted to say. Let's say I want to create a piece of content. That's where I feel that the human creativity will always be a big part of that whole equation.
Yeah, and Piers, like I want to go back to your initial thesis and challenge with everything, because especially in the areas where PSFK plays, like just because AI can simulate that, just because I can ask what the latest trends are in whatever field, doesn't mean I want that from AI, right? Like, because I think of people I worked with, like if anyone knew like the 360 Eyes crew, like Lee Mycon, who was their chief strategy officer. Now, he was brilliant. I'll trust him 1,000% more than AI. I trust people like Michael Miraflor, right? Like I is so much more. We've had people like Tamika Key, who brings like the West Coast ad industry perspective and so much more, right? Like I want to know through their filters. I don't want to know like the least common denominator. And so I'm like, I still feel like the stuff you've been doing all along is actually more important now than it ever was, because I don't want the same thing that everyone else in this room gets. Yeah.
That leads to a question I had in terms of you take out the nuance. AI takes the nuance out of a lot of the research that I've done. When you do a summary, it's missing the gold nuggets, right? And it takes that human discernment to understand what the gold nugget is. And there's a lot of AI interviewing agents now, but they don't understand what, they're just going to go straight through the discussion guide as if it was linear. But a real behavioral scientist never goes straight through the discussion guide. You go off on tangents as people lay down the golden eggs for you. So how do you overcome that?
I mean, I'm a big fan of the human's ability to contradict and to go against the grain, I think, and come up with brilliant ideas. I think with the AI interviews, my experience with AI interviews is you can have systems who can react to what people are saying and can explore different topics. I found it overwhelming, and I found that I was burning too many tokens to do this. So I make it very linear. But there's signs that we can do some of that. I think, again, it's like how do you create frameworks for the AI? You just don't let the AI just come up with the questionnaire. You actually kind of spend a lot of time preparing the questionnaire.
What are the kinds of differences that you're seeing between digital, virtual people and real people when you're mining them for quality?
Well, what I love about these digital twins, these human agents, is that I focus. So when I interview them, I'm like, what are you good at? And so Jeremy Bergstein has spent the last few years focused on zoos and aquariums and things like that, but he brings a lot of his retail experience. And so I can get a real niche focus with that one, with his database, his corpus. But what happens is that system can pull data from elsewhere. So if I was having an expert interview with Jeremy and I'm like, well, what's the size of the market in South Africa for museums right now? He's not going to be able to tell me, but a machine can go off and find information and scale that information. And the digital twin can talk to another digital twin, and maybe there's a South African expert or something like that, and can bring that twin into the conversation and mine for the data as well. So these are things I'm exploring and things I'm enjoying about these kind of little systems, agentic systems.
I'd like to be connected to Jeremy because I know the head of marketing for the Irwin family in Australia.
Yes. Well, I will send you a link. I'll send you who he is. Yeah.
Thank you.
David, it's wonderful. I'm glad there's been a great conversation. And that you folks allowed me to present, what is not a fully baked idea, but allows me to show where I'm thinking about when it comes to AI, and hopefully gives you some inspiration as well.
Well, this is what we want to be, a place to workshop ideas, and you're not the first person who's come on here and said this is the first time that you've presented it. So that's and the kind of testing ground and diverse perspectives we get from this room. It's like I love sitting back and learning and see where people want to take things. So you've been very gracious in sharing so much knowledge over decades that if we can give a little bit in return, all the better.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
if anybody has got any ideas, just ping me on LinkedIn and things like that. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, keep us posted where you take things. Feel free to chime in the Slack and elsewhere. And have a great rest of your week. And for everyone here, we've got a bunch of updates that I will be making. I've just been locking in the next month the calendar. We've got another recruiter now coming next week, and we've got some other fun ones coming up. So you'll see a bunch of things pop up in the next few days. So look forward to seeing all of you back very soon. And thanks again, Piers. So much fun.
I'm going to be in Stockholm, so you can be sure I'm going to Aidan's lab.
Yeah. Aidan's lab. Do that.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your take.
All right.